Hello, lovely people. My name is Jasmine, and you are watching Faithfully Uncool, my little space on the internet where I talk about faith, religious studies, etc. So if you're interested, please do subscribe. But today, we're going to be talking about none other around Valentine's Day than the Song of Songs. You might be very familiar with this text, but I promise you, whether you've read it 1,000 times or no time at all, I bet you're going to learn something new today. So here are a few things you may not have known about the Song of Songs. Let's roll it. So first things first, what is the Song of Songs? Well, the Song of Songs read today is, quite frankly, a love poem. A beautiful poem between a young woman and a young man, and how they describe their deep desire for each other with very erotic and flowery language about how deeply they want one another. And there's not only the young woman's point of view and the man's point of view, but the text also includes the daughters of Jerusalem. Sometimes it says friends, sometimes it says narrator or chorus, however your Bible describes it. But there's this other group of young women who interject the lovers. So while the woman's talking, the man's talking, sometimes it's these friends or young women talking off to the side, asking questions or adding commentary to the lovers' conversations or to the lovers' words. And so if you were to read the Song of Songs today, it would honestly look like a play because it's written like dialogue. However, it is important to remember that it is a poem. More specifically, it's a collection of different love poems written down around the time of the 10th century BC. However, it's very possible and very likely that these poems existed in an oral tradition before they were ever written down. So once one understands when the Song of Songs was written, well, then it makes you think, who actually wrote it? And the Song of Songs is also known as the Song of Solomon. And this is because it's attributed to Solomon in its first line. The Song of Songs is said to be Solomon's. However, many biblical scholars do not believe that Solomon actually sat down and wrote the Song of Songs. Instead, they believe that his name was added at a later date because of the fact that he was known to be a king of great splendor, who had great wisdom, and most importantly, when looking at a love poem, had a multitude of wives. And so when you're thinking about these lovers, you think, how big is their romance? It's on the level of Solomon. Think royalty. Think King Solomon. So for a reader reading it at that time, it would be very triggering to read, oh my gosh, this is not just a love poem of two regular people. It's a love poem of epic proportions. However, Renita Weems, a biblical scholar, goes as far to say that while it may be attributed to Solomon, perhaps one of Solomon's wives wrote the Song of Songs. After all, this would be a woman who was fairly educated, but also close enough to the royal court to have written certain things that are mentioned in the Song of Songs. And so it's very likely that under this interpretation, it wasn't even Solomon who wrote it, but it also wasn't even a male who wrote it. The Song of Songs could very well have a female author, and biblical scholars don't really see a reason to think of the contrary. Simply put, we don't know who wrote it, but it could have been anyone, of any gender. The next thing we know about the Song of Songs is that it's not just a regular love story, but it's a love story between two people who should not be together. It is the classic tale of forbidden love. Daughters of Jerusalem, I am dark like the tents of Kedar, yet lovely like the curtains of Solomon. Do not stare at me because I am dark, for the sun has gazed on me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me take care of the vineyards. I have not taken care of my own vineyard. In this verse of chapter 1 of the Song of Songs, it is detailed by the young woman, the lover speaking, that for whatever reason, she is a social outcast. And so most scholars interpret this passage to be that she has a lower social class. She is visibly darker because her brothers have made her work outside. And so she is less appealing and less attractive than perhaps her paler peers. However, it's not quite certain whether this is purely about class or whether it's about her ethnicity or her race. It's unsure, but what is positive is that for whatever reason, the Shulamite woman, the young woman speaker, wants to make it clear to the audience and the daughters of Jerusalem that I mentioned before that for whatever reason, it's not normal. She's not the normal standard of beauty. And the fact that her lover loves her and the fact that she has found her beloved is not only just happy-go-lucky chance, but it's rare and it's uncommon and people might not like it. And so she's being very clear here to say, don't judge me because I don't look like the girl that you would expect to be with this amazing guy, so to speak. And so it tips the reader off immediately that these two people, for whatever reason, should not be together or are a very unlikely couple. Like a lily among thorns, so is my darling among the young women. Like an apricot tree among the trees of the forest, so is my love among the young men. I delight to sit in his shade, and his fruit is sweet to my taste. He brought me to the banquet hall, and he looked on me with love. When we look at verses like this in the Song of Songs, in light of understanding that the Shulamite woman is not the normal standard of beauty, then we understand that the man's constant affirmation of her beauty and how pleasing she is to his sight and how much she stands out to him among other people is a bit of an argument to the audience. Renita Weems explores the idea that the Shulamite woman and the young man are not just pleasing and praising one another because of their deep love, but they're actually trying to convince the audience and the daughters of Jerusalem that we hear speak on the side that they deserve to be together, that whether their love is socially acceptable or not, it is a love that deserves to be celebrated. Christopher King takes this even further in the Queer Bible commentary and understands that this is something that a lot of queer people can relate to, that he expresses that people in the LGBTQ community today and all the time have understood the idea that it's not always socially appropriate to be with the one you love openly. And the woman in the Song of Songs expresses how much she wants to be with her lover out in the open, how much she wants to introduce him to her mother, and how much she wishes he were someone related to her so that she didn't even have to hide behind closed doors to show him affection, that she wishes society was kinder towards their love and respected them. And Christopher King explores the idea that LGBTQ people experience this all the time and know that fully well. And so despite the fact that the Song of Songs is a love story between a man and a woman, we can't ignore the fact that there are people today in relationships that don't include men and women, but include men and men or woman and woman, and how they experience this idea of feeling outcasted by society due to their own love. I think something powerful that King writes is that certainly the Shulamite and the beloved do not lose their identity as female and male, but the Song of Songs refuses to appropriate the differences as a category with any ultimate social, moral, or metaphysical significance. People of all different backgrounds have found a connection with the Song of Songs, and those people include people who are not heterosexual, and I think that that's really important to point out. Another thing the Song of Songs undoubtedly shows us is that love and sexuality is beautiful and to be celebrated. How beautiful you are, and how pleasant, my love, with such delights. Your stature is like a palm tree, your breasts are like clusters of fruit. I said, I will climb the palm tree and take hold of its fruit. May your breasts be like clusters of grapes, and the fragrance of your breath like apricots. Your mouth is like fine wine, flowing smoothly for my love, gliding past my lips and teeth. I am my love's, and his desire is for me. Come, my love, let's go to the field. Let's spend the night among the henna blossoms. Let's go early to the vineyards. Let's see if the vine has budded, if the blossom has opened, if the pomegranates are in bloom. So throughout the Song of Songs, we get this amazing and very detailed nature imagery, and that's no accident. If those lyrics verses sounded erotic to you, that's because they are. The Song of Songs is erotic literature, and it does reflect a lot of ancient Near East love poems that were written around the same time. To be very careful though, Renita Weems makes a really good point where she says that while the Song of Songs very truthfully is erotic, it is not pornographic. And so it is erotic in the sense that there is a deep feeling and a deep emotional connection between the lovers. It is not purely physical or just so that the readers can read it, get off, and walk away, not to be vulgar. But it is supposed to be beautifully written, and it's supposed to not shy away from sex or sexual desires. What makes this so significant is that the woman in Song of Songs, as we just read, is just as sexually explicit in her desires as the man is. And the Song of Songs doesn't punish her for this. It doesn't say that that's wrong. It doesn't say that that's incorrect because she's female. It actually celebrates it. The whole poem is both of them going back and forth about how much they want each other, sexually, physically, what have you. And so it's really important for us to point out that female empowerment is all throughout the songs. And when you understand that it could have had a female author itself, it really puts into perspective how unique the Song of Songs is in comparison to other books in the Bible. Whether you want to believe it or not, the Bible is a patriarchal text. And so when you have the Song of Songs, perhaps written by a female, exploring and celebrating a female's ownership of her body and her desire for the one whom she loves, that's a big deal. Song of Songs is unique. It's beautiful, erotic, and female empowerment is throughout. Which begs the question, what the heck is it doing in the Bible in the first place? Well, that depends on who you ask. If you're Jewish, then you grew up with the interpretation that the Song of Songs is a beautiful description of God's love for humanity, or more specifically, the Israelites. However, if you're a Christian like me, you grew up in church, and you may have heard the theory that the Song of Songs is a beautiful representation of how much Christ loves the church. However, for a lot of scholars, and this is not to take away the importance of the songs, it is truthfully a love poem. It is a series about how much these two lovers love each other. After all, the Song of Songs does not mention God not once. It doesn't mention prayer, it doesn't mention fasting, it doesn't mention Jesus or God. And so if you were to ask the young lovers, what is the Song of Songs about? It would probably be about how society is against them and how society doesn't accept their love. After all, in the Song of Songs, the lovers come into their love and they come into safety in nature. And while nature is wild and untamed, it's actually God's creation, the image of God, people who suppress their love and judge them when they're out in the city streets. And so the Song of Songs juxtaposes nature and city, the wild and urban life, much more than it compares God to humanity. And that's not to say that you can't read the Song of Songs and have your own personal connection with it. After all, it's a literary text, and the Song of Songs could be like your favorite book. It gives you a fuzzy feeling, and it gives someone else a completely different feeling. So take away from it what you will. All I gotta say is, I read it around the age of 13, 14, and I wasn't thinking about my Lord and Savior, but that's just me. Alright guys, so there you have it. I hope you love the Song of Songs as much as I do, and that's going to be my video about it. I know that we talked a lot about gender in this video, so please feel free to check out my other videos that touch upon gender, including Philip and the Eunuch and what that can teach us about LGBTQ inclusion, as well as the myth of the good girl on this channel. If you like what I create and you want to see more content like this, or you have requests for other content about the Bible or about religious studies or faith, then please feel free to let me know, and also subscribe. Have a great day and go in peace. Bye, loves.